Good evening, Canterbury. Welcome to this Newsmakers Extra. Well, it's local body election year, and this week we're joined by a City Council panel to discuss a swathe of civic issues and also to look ahead to October. Joining us, three serving City Councillors, Barry Corbett, Ngaire Button and Yani Johanson. Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mike.
We will start with transport concerns because they have been a recurring theme in Christchurch since the start of the year. I want to get your thoughts, first of all, on light rail, because the Mayor has certainly nailed his colours to the mast on light rail. He wants it to form the basis of our future public transport system. Would you agree, and is it realistic? Barry?
Yeah, I think it is realistic. It's something that's a long way ahead of us. But then I remember back to the 1970s when I was in radio in Auckland, and Dove Meyer Robinson was going on about rail transport and everybody rubbished him. Now, 30 years later, they say, if only we'd listened back in those days. So I think it's the type of thing that you look into the future, and I don't think he's expecting to have a huge light rail system up and running by November this year. I think it's quite a few years away, but we've got to start looking at it. And what I would like us to look at is that we've got a railway line that goes from down south all the way right next to AMI Stadium. Wouldn't it be good to use part of that for a light rail system leading up to the Rugby World Cup just as a trial? And it will show how well it will work.
Is there a possibility that could be put to the test?
Hey, I'd love it to. I'm not too sure, but I would like to see them working on that.
Do you think light rail has more promise than buses?
Long term, yes, absolutely, I do.
Why?
Because I think people like it more. Generally, you get better buy-in from people on rail than you do on buses. Buses are still seen as loser cruisers, and somebody said that to me last week. I think that's a shame, and I don't agree with the concept myself, but I think the public will buy into trains before they'll buy into buses. And I think they move more people more quickly. If you look at the traffic issue on the main North Road, going up to Rangiora, people coming in from Rangiora, Ahoka, Clarkville, Kaiapoi to work in the city, one train could fix all of that. So yeah, long term, I think it's a good solution.
Yani?
Mike, I would say that what's really needed is a common vision for how we have a transport system within our city. And the irony, of course, for some people that are promoting the idea of light rail, which I think we should be looking at light transit, and that can be kind of a not necessarily rail, but if you look at some of the international examples, like in Phoenix, for example, they have very successful light transit systems that whiz around the city, a bit like our orbiter. And what works for locals generally works for tourists. I think the biggest mistake we've made is extending the tram. That will have a huge negative impact on our bus services. And we're still fundamentally, I think, confused about what we're trying to achieve in terms of connecting the suburbs to the central city. Now, this council in this term has actually started a Christchurch transport plan, and that's to be commended. You just hope that some of the big decisions which we've already made, like the tram, don't get in the way of getting a really complete, holistic approach to how we value transport in our city. But let's have a clear vision that's easily understood, and I think the cost of doing that will be a lot cheaper than just taking an ad hoc approach.
When will the new transport interchange be up and running? When's that scheduled for completion? Is it a couple of years?
3 years away.
I think it's around 2014, 2015, but what you've got to remember, Mike, is that the central government have now changed a lot of the transport funding to move away from public passenger transport and to move into roads. And so there will be huge challenges for us as a city in terms of the decisions we make, the funding we get from central government as to what we can do.
In the event, I just want to come back to the light rail issue, in the event that that does become the city's focus in terms of becoming the basis of our public transport system, could the transport interchange be converted
Yes.
without too much of a hassle?
Yep.
Right. Okay, well that's
been
good.
looked at.
That's
And that's one of the things. I mean, personally, I actually really wanted the transport interchange to be down by Cass Street, Morehouse Avenue, Colombo intersection. There's a big old railway shed down there, which is now the Westland Milk Yard, and would have been great. But I understood the reasons for putting it further inside the CBD, and I accept that. But I still think that we could look at something down at the linkage there between Colombo and Morehouse.
Speaking of the city centre, of course, we've got this report that Jan Gell, the famous urban designer, has been working on, and I know that you've got lots of recommendations to work through over the next few weeks and months. Overall, what are your general thoughts on it?
Well, once again, it's a report that we have to look at and sit down. And in a report, they come up with everything that they can think of, not expecting you to pass 100% of everything there. And there are some good things, and there's some things that I think are a wee bit pie in the sky.
Like what?
But, well, I mean, you can't take cars out of everywhere. You've got to still allow for service vehicles and other things to happen. So, I mean, that can go in.
Would you take them out of Combo Street?
Yes, I probably would. Because it's working now in the city mall, and in fact all the retailers now, you know, the empty shops in the city mall are now being filled up. I know that the landlords down there are quite happy. So the same thing could happen, and it's happened overseas. I look at some cities like Vancouver and a few others that I've been lucky enough to been to, and I've seen what's happened when you've taken the traffic away. Yeah. Taking traffic away is not totally bad as long as it's not taken too far away. But some of the things are good, others are bad. But we have to have service vehicles going in, so there always has to be that room for a small road going through, or as we've done with the City Mall, a combination of the tram tracks and the service road.
Okay. Any impressions from his report?
I really like. It was a learning experience for me, to be honest, Mike, because you know I've only been on the council for 5 minutes really, and a lot of these concepts, a lot of these concepts are new, and a lot of things that I've never thought about before. And seeing the visuals and understanding the research that Jan Gell and his team did in Christchurch when they came here, and how they said the car is king, and how we put the car and access from door to door, trying to get a park outside of where we work or as close as possible, is really unrealistic. If the city's to grow, and we need the city to grow, we need to have other forms of transport, and we need to get our head around the fact that we can't drive from our front gate to the door outside of where we work.
Should city councillors lead by example and leave the car at home?
That's an interesting conversation that I've had with my own family. A lot of councillors do. I know Chrissy, she buses all the time. I find that difficult because I've got a young family, so I've often got to pick kids up from school on the way home, and then I've got to go and get the groceries on the way home. And so I think there's seasons in life where using a bus or using a train is more convenient. And I certainly, if I was going from home to work and from work to home, I'd find that a lot easier.
All right.
It did look good on Lycra. It really would.
We'll come to Lycra shortly.
It looked good on Lycra.
Quick comment?
Well, the Jan Gell report, I mean, it's interesting, Mike, because the process that this is going through as well, I think it will only be successful if we bring the community with us. Unfortunately, councils refuse to send it to the local community board. That gives limited opportunity for local residents to be involved, and I think that's a real shame. If we want to make radical changes to our central city, then we need to be inclusive in our approach rather than exclusive. And I think a lot of the ideas, and it actually rehashes from things that have been said, 10, 20 years ago. In fact, there was an inner city charrette with local residents. I think in 1998, there was a number of things that they wanted, 94 may have been, and we still haven't implemented those. But if this report helps council have a clear focus and starts to get some of those things like greening our streets,
all right,
then I think it's a good thing.
We'll take a break. We'll come back to these issues in a moment, and we'll also throw in the issue of cycling, which has been rather feisty in Christchurch in recent weeks. Also freedom camping, cruising, this new bylaw being proposed, and plenty of other issues. Do stay with us.